Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second monthly web workshop on Fluke Connect. Today's topic is the Fluke Connect Desktop. I will be providing you with details on how to edit an image. My name is Chaun Carda. I am a Tier 2 Technical Support Engineer and the Fluke Lead. So we'll begin with a few housekeeping items. The session today will be recorded, and we will be sending out an email following this presentation that will include a link to that recording so you can share this with teammates or coworkers. Phones will be muted. Feel free to type questions at any time. Please limit questions to the topic of the workshop, and questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Our agenda for today will begin with how to edit a single image. Next, we'll cover how to use optimize image options. Then we'll focus on how to use analyze image options, followed by how to add notes to an image, and we'll wrap it all up with how to use the group edit option. We'll start with a quick high-level overview of how to edit an image and then cover each editing option in more detail. So this is just a high-level overview. So to access the image editor, you need to click on the Measurements tab and then go to the File Manager view, which is the second icon over here in the upper right-hand corner. From there, you'll be able to view all of the files that you've chosen not to sync to the Fluke Connect Cloud. So any of the files that are not in the Fluke Connect Cloud folder, those files here, these IS2 files here, are not getting synced to the cloud. So you use the File Manager view to access those files for editing. So if I wanted to edit either one of my two files that I'm not syncing to the cloud, I simply select the file and double click on it to launch the image editor. How to edit an image from the Measurements tab in the Image Preview view. So you click on the Measurements tab, you click on the first icon here, and this gives you a preview of all the images. These are the images that are getting synced to the Fluke Connect Cloud. You can see we've got a couple of images here. And if we wanted to edit any of these images, you simply move your mouse to hover over the image itself and double click the left mouse button to launch the image editor. The other option for launching the image editor from the image preview view is to go to the drop down arrow, this little tiny caret next to the file name for the image, and click on that drop down arrow and you'll see a list of pop-up options, the first of which is the edit option. So if we click on the edit option, that will take us to the thermal image editor. So right now we're viewing the thermal image editor. This is the name of the file that we're viewing. And we're currently on the Optimize tab in the image editor. Here you can change the palette you use to take the thermal image and some of the other settings, including saturation and background temp. So you can see we've got palette, saturation, background temperature. There's a variety of different options, and we'll be going through each one of those in a moment. Next, we've got the Analyze tab. Here you can assign a severity level for the image itself. You can create custom markers and place those on the chart. You can add system-generated default markers, the hot point, simply by checking the checkbox next to that, the cold point or the center point, that information, and then it would be displayed here on the image itself. We'll go over that in more detail in a moment. Next, we've got notes. Here you can view any notes that have been added to the image, or you can add notes yourself to the image by using this text box and clicking the add button. You can view photo notes, listen to voice notes, and view and add annotations as well. Last but not least, we've got the image info. Here you can see a snapshot of a bunch of key information related to your image. So you can see the background temperature, the emissivity, the transmission, the average temperature, the calibration range, the camera model, even down to the camera serial number if you happen to need that information for any reason. The next section is how to use optimize image options, where we will cover each of the options in detail. So we are now in the image editor on the Optimize tab. There's a lot of different options available in the Options or Optimize tab. The first thing I want to point out is that we use the optimize feature to make the image the best looking image ever. So you really highlight the area of the image you want your viewer to focus in on. That's the purpose of the optimize tab. The first thing I'd like to talk about is option number 2 here. This is our level and span information. So what is level and span? The software automatically detects the hottest and coldest point in the image, and that is known as our span. It also detects the midpoint, and that is known as the level. Then it takes a color palette and applies that spectrum in that span or range. And here you can see our hot point is set at 109. Our midpoint or our level is known as 43.8, and our cold point is negative 21.6. So our span is 21.6 to 109, and our level is 43.8. Next is the palette. That's number 3 on the chart here. So right now we're using the blue-red palette, but you've got several different palette options to choose from, and a palette is simply a color scheme. Infrared cameras and software provide a choice of color palettes that help quickly distinguish thermal variations and patterns in an image. Next, we've got saturation. Saturation is an option that you can use to specify what color you want things to appear that are outside the span. So hotter than the hottest point. So our hottest point is 109. So this would be where we would see saturation information, and colder than the coldest point. Next, we have color alarms. That's number 5 on our chart here. Some infrared cameras and software offer user-selectable high and/or low apparent temperature color alarms to quickly highlight areas that are outside the normal temperature range. I'll be showing you the color alarm and the saturation features in more detail in the software in a moment. Number 6 on our chart here is emissivity. As you know, everything emits thermal radiation, but not everything emits energy in the same way. Chrome and shiny objects are terrible emitters, while black objects are good emitters. This feature enables you to make an adjustment for the surface of the object you're taking an image of, so you can take into account the emissivity level for that object. I'll show that in the software as well. The 7th option we're looking at here is the background temperature. This is simply the ambient temperature, so you can make any needed adjustment for that. Next, we've got the transmission. This is the option you would use if you're using IR windows. You select the setting that is specified on the IR window. Now we're moving over to the middle area of the chart, and we're looking at the zoom feature. So if you needed to zoom in on a specific area, you could do that using the magnifying glass. This is a digital zoom option, not an optical zoom option, so it can get pixelated. Keep that in mind. We also have IR fusion blending. Right now you can see that we're looking at the full infrared image because that's where our indicator is on the sliding scale. If we move all the way over to the right, we would be able to see the full visible light image. All right, number 11, these options are simply rotate left and rotate right. If you needed to, for any reason, rotate the image, you can do that in the software. Over here, next to number 12, these arrows are parallax view adjustment. So if the infrared image is offset from the actual object, you can make an adjustment and move the infrared image over to align it better with the visible light image. And 13, down here, very close to the bottom, we've got the checkbox for PIP, which is picture-in-picture, and this enables you to see the visible light image surrounding the infrared image. So you can select this option if you want to provide a little context to the viewer on what they're actually looking at. And last but not least, we have the Save button, of course. So don't forget to click the Save button after you've worked hard on optimizing your image and you've made all of your changes. All right, now let's go in and optimize an image. Going to toggle over to our Fluke Connect Desktop software. And right now we're on the Tools tab. So if you remember, I said we need to click the Measurements tab if we want to edit a measurement. And we're currently on the Tile view, so we can preview what our images look like. Remember, I said there are two ways to go into edit mode. I can either move my mouse over the image itself and double click with my left mouse button, or I can click on the drop-down list box and click the Edit button. I'm going to do the easy fast option, so I'm going to double click on the image. This will take us into the Optimize Image tab. You can see here that I'm in the Thermal Image Editor, and this is the name of the file that I'm currently editing. And as I just pointed out, I'm on the Optimize Image tab. Again, as a reminder, we use the Optimize Image tab to make the image look the best it can be, to draw viewers' attention to the area of the chart that we really want to focus on. I like this image, even though it's probably not something you would normally take in any kind of an inspection round, because it really indicates the different colors. We've got red for hot, yellow for medium, and then blue for cold. What we have is a cup of hot water, a cup of room temperature water, and a cup of cold water. So remember, the point of the Optimize tab is to make it the best looking image ever. So what would happen if we adjusted our level and span? Remember, our level and span, our span is our hottest point and our coldest point, and our level is our midpoint. So in order to make an adjustment to this span, we need to deselect the auto scale. So simply click that checkbox, and that'll enable you to move the span. So if we slowly slide it up, we can see, oh, well, that doesn't look very good. Obviously, that's all black. That's not going to be very beneficial to our viewer. Or we can slide it all the way down, and that's a little bit better if we wanted to focus on the cold portion of the image. In our scenario, let's say we want to focus on the hot portion of the image. So if we slowly slide this up, what's great about this is, look what happens. We don't care about the room temperature cup. We don't care about the cold cup, and those have virtually disappeared in our image. Not only that, in addition to that, our hot cup, which was just all red before, now shows a lot more detail in our information, right? We can see that the cup is probably half full based on the amount of liquid that's in here, and we can see the temperature as well. All right, let's go back and reset the image back to what it looked like before. Next, we're going to discuss palette. And remember, a palette is simply a color scheme. The color tones correspond to the apparent surface temperature of the target. The key is to select the palette that best shows the thermal differences for your specific application. Slight differences are easier to see with a monochromatic palette, such as grayscale or amber, while high contrast palettes make it easier to quickly find obvious anomalies. Most customers that I've spoken with like the Iron Bow palette, and that generally does make good images, but you should select the palette that works best for your image. So in our case, we're currently using the blue-red, which I love because the red cup's hot and the blue cup's cold. Pretty simple to interpret that. But what if we change it to grayscale? That's what it looks like. Now that doesn't present the information that I want to really present very well. So we could try amber. We could try Iron Bow. That's a popular option. That really is one of the most frequently used palettes, and we do recommend that. But in my case, I do like the blue-red because it's just very clear that the hot cup is red and the cold cup is blue. So for the purposes of what I'm doing here today, I'm going to leave the palette as blue-red. Next is saturation. So saturation is simply what color you want to use if you want things that, let me try that again. It's simply what color you want things to appear that are out of range. So right now we've got our blue-red palette and we're using standard saturation. So you can see on the blue-red palette, the very tippy top is going to be dark burgundy. So anything that's out of range, outside, hotter than our hottest temperature is going to be this dark burgundy. Anything that's colder than our coldest temperature is going to be this dark blue. If we change our saturation to red-blue, that saturation is going to look bright red, anything that's hotter than hot, and kind of a bright royal blue for anything that's colder than cold. Let's deselect our scale and let's show you what this looks like. So, oh, Remember how before it turned black when we went too hot? Now, because we're using the red-blue saturation, anything that's too hot is going to be red, anything that's too cold is going to be blue. Too cold is blue. So if we change it to white-black, it goes anything that's too hot is going to be white, anything that's too cold is going to be blue. So basically it's just a way to eliminate irrelevant data on your image by choosing what type of saturation color you want to use. Again, we're going to set everything back to normal. Right, the next thing we're going to discuss is the color alarm isotherm. Isotherm lets you eliminate a temperature range from within your span. So where the saturation lets you eliminate irrelevant data that was outside of your span, a color alarm isotherm is going to let you eliminate data that's inside your span. So if I select isotherm, you can see that right now this little tiny additional set of parameters popped up. If we deselect auto scale, and I say, I want to rule out everything that's in the, let's do this. We're focusing on the hot area, right? So maybe I want to say, I don't care about the room temperature cup or the cold cup. So I want to eliminate those off of my screen here. So that is within our span, but we want to eliminate that off our chart. So we can use an isotherm color to do that. Now, because our isotherm color defaulted to this extremely bright orangey red color, it actually seems to emphasize it as opposed to make it fade away. So I may want to change this color to say a gray. So the focus of the chart now becomes, or the focus of the image now becomes the red hot cup. And you can see that the color here has changed. We can drag this to make it as big as we want. So now we're really focusing on exactly what area of the chart is the hottest, or the image is the hottest. So let's set everything back. And the next thing we'll talk about is color alarm. On Fluke infrared cameras, when you scan the area with the color alarms activated, you see a visible light image of everything within the high and low parameters. Anything outside of those temperatures appears in infrared. That feature gives you a quick indication of where issues might be so you can drill down into those areas. So if we select outside range, everything outside of the designated alarm range will show in infrared. So let's go ahead and pick color alarm. We're going to select alarm outside range. And what happens is you can see right away, we've got the ability to select which areas are going to be in. Deselect the auto scale. Always remember to do that. You won't be able to make any adjustments otherwise. So here I can say anything that's going to be hotter than 76 degrees is going to show an infrared because it's outside of our alarm range. This is our defined alarm range, anything between 38 and 76. So maybe I want to change it and say I want to show everything that's hot and everything that's cold. This is kind of cool. So here, this is our alarm range. Anything between 85 and 108 is going to show up in infrared because it's outside of our alarm range of 57 to 85. And anything that's colder than 57 degrees, anything between 38 and 57 degrees, that will also show up in infrared. So you've got the hot infrared and the cold infrared. Now, as I stated at the beginning, I'm focusing only on the hot, so I really don't care about the cold. So I want that to go away. So all of the visible light image here for all the temperatures that are inside of the alarm range or outside of the alarm range. If we flip this, what exactly would you expect to happen? Well, right now, tiny portion of the chart's infrared and the rest of it's visible light. So if we flip it, the reverse happens, right? This is visible light and everything else is in infrared. And it works the same for alarm above threshold and alarm below threshold. So really, palette, saturation, and color alarms are all ways to focus the image on the areas that you want to bring attention to. They're just different tools that we provide you in our software that enable you to do it. All right, let's go ahead and let's reset everything. We're going to turn the color alarm off and set the auto scale back on. And the next thing we'll talk about is emissivity. And as I stated before, and as you already know, everything emits thermal radiation, but not everything emits energy in the same way. Low emissivity surfaces, such as shiny metals, can reflect infrared energy from other objects and throw off your image and your measurement accuracy. So we have options available to adjust parameters in the image. What's really cool about this is you don't even need to know this information because we provide it for you. So you can just select whichever type of surface you have, whether it's aluminum, brass, bronze, cast iron, and we will make the appropriate adjustment on the emissivity calculation for you. Next, we've got background temperature. This is the ambient temperature. So if you need to make an adjustment for that, you can do that. And the next thing we have is transmission. So adjustments can be made based on IR windows. You just use the setting from the IR window marking. So the last three parameters that we just talked about, emissivity, background temperature, and transmission, will adjust the temperature data in each pixel based on calculations. So these three options will actually affect the data. Right now this says 107, but if I change my emissivity rating and my background temperature, this number is going to change based on the calculation that the software makes to adjust for those two parameters. Okay, next we've got zoom. Again, this is just a quick way to zoom into the image if you need to focus into a specific area. We've got the infrared fusion blending. So right now we're looking at the full infrared image. Maybe we want to have a little bit more of the visible light image. So we can slide that over. And now we can see the actual cups, not just the infrared image on the cups. If we use this option here, this is our parallax view adjustment. This lets us line up the infrared part of the image with the visible light image if it happens to be off for any reason. We can also rotate the image, rotate it left, rotate it right. And last but not least, we can show picture-in-picture. So this shows the infrared image surrounded by the visible light image in order to provide context to the viewer on what they're looking at. Now, last but not least, don't forget to save if you want to save all the changes in your hard work that you've been working on. In our case, we're not going to save our changes. All right, our next section is how to use Analyze Image Options, where we will cover each of the options available in detail. So here in the image editor, once again, that's our file name. We're on the Analyze section of the software. We can set the severity level. We've got a couple different options for severity. Options are normal, moderate, severe, and extreme. We can add custom markers, a point marker, a line marker, a rectangle, and so on. If we ever wanted to make any changes to these markers, we can use the pencil icon for edit, or we can delete them using the trash can icon. Maybe we just have some simple edits we want to make to this part of the chart. So we can go in and add a hot point, a cold point, or center point. These are system generated data points that we can add simply by clicking on the check mark next to each one of those. And last but not least, we've got the line graph. If we happen to use a line marker, it will show up on the line graph here. So all of the data points for that line marker are plotted in this information here. You can view the X profile, the Y profile, and you can even use this little icon if there's a line graph to export the line graph data into a CSV file. Now remember, Optimize was to show, you use the Optimize option to show the image in the best light possible. So you can draw your attention, your viewer's attention to the area they want to focus on. The Analyze option gives you features where you can analyze problems on the image. And the purpose of this is to call out specific temperature data in order to draw attention to a problem area. So after you've optimized the image, selected the proper palettes, the saturation levels, the color alarms, any of those other types of things you want to change, here's where you can start adding custom markers and adding description labels to specific areas of the chart. All right, now we're going to go into the software, the Fluke Connect Desktop software, and use some of those Analyze options. So remember, to edit an image, we simply double click. And instead of working in the Optimize tab, we're going to work in the Analyze tab. As I stated, you can select the severity level for the image. If it's a critical asset, you may want to, use this information here to keep track of, what kind of condition it's in right now. Is it in normal condition? Is it in a severe condition? We can add custom markers, which we'll do in a moment, or we can add system-generated markers. So right now, we currently have the hot point, the cold point, and the center point. So hot point, cold point, and center point. I've already indicated that I really am focused on the hot point for this particular chart, not the midpoint or the cold point. So let's deselect those. First, let's deselect the center point, and that one's disappeared. Let's deselect the cold point, and that one's disappeared because those aren't important for the purposes of what we're trying to present to our customer or end user. This is what we want to focus on, the hot cut and the hot temperature. Now, the next thing I look at here is that, well, this hot temperature, it's like a red text on a red background. So that's really difficult to see. So what I want to do is I want to edit this text to make it a different color. In order to edit, I've got two options. I can either double click on this line, the marker is the hot marker, double click on it to go into edit mode, or I can select it and then use the pencil to go into edit mode. So you can see that I've selected the hot marker, I click the edit icon, and now I'm looking at the editing options for the hot marker. Now I'm unable to change the marker name because this is a system generated marker. So we don't enable you to tweak with the system generated markers. So I can't change the name. However, I can change background temperature, emissivity, and marker color. Again, I said this was this sort of orangey red color on red background, and that's very difficult to read. So I'm going to change it to white. If I wanted to, I could also change the placement. Maybe let's put it at the bottom of the actual marker. And then in order to save our changes, be sure to click the Apply button. And now you can see that my text has changed from the orange-red color to a white color, so it's much, much clearer and easier to see. And the label is now moved from the top of the marker to the bottom of the marker. So that's how we can use system-generated markers. Those are all of the markers that are provided by the system. The next thing I want to do is go in and create a custom marker because this is where you probably will be spending a lot of your time. To do that, you simply need to select the type of marker that you want to add to your chart. In our case, we're going to start with a rectangle marker. So I need to go into draw mode. So I click the marker type that I want to use by clicking the left mouse button. What happens is you can see that I've selected the rectangle marker and now it's got a little yellow box around it. That tells me I'm currently in draw marker mode and I've selected the rectangle type of draw marker that I want to draw. Once I'm in draw marker mode, I can move over to my chart. I click with my left mouse button and then I hold the mouse button down and I drag the box to wherever I want it to appear on the screen. Oops, once I'm done, I let go of the marker. I happen to double click there, so I got two sets of data. But what normally happens is you get the one set of data. The rectangle marker is automatically named by the system. This is the default name it gave, AO, and it provides you with the maximum temperature, the average temperature, and the minimum temperature within that rectangle. Now, like I said, I accidentally double clicked, so I created an almost invisible second rectangle box here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. If I want to delete something, you select it, and then you click delete. And now my second, my oops marker is now gone. So for the marker that I did want to have on here, the rectangle marker, I don't want to call it AO. That's not very descriptive. So I'm going to go into edit mode by double clicking it. And I can see the marker name here is AO, and I'm going to change that to area of concern. And right now the marker color is white. I could change that to this pretty purple if I wanted to. And right now on the marker, I'm showing the name of the marker, the minimum information or the minimum temperature, the maximum temperature, and the average temperature. That's a lot of information. So maybe I don't really need the average temperature, so I'm going to deselect that. I could also change the placement, but in this case, I like where it's at right now, so I'm just going to click apply. So now I've got a new marker. It's a rectangle marker. I've changed the color, I've changed the name, and I've selected which data I want to appear, just the max and min temperature information, not the average. So let's add another custom marker. This time we're going to add a line. That's another popular type of marker. Remember, when we want to add a marker, we select the marker by clicking with the left mouse button. That puts us into draw mode. The yellow box tells us which type of marker we're going to be adding or drawing. And then we go over to our image. We click with our left mouse button, hold the button down, and drag to create the marker that we want to create. And once we've done that, the system will automatically name the marker. In this case, it's LO or L0. It provides us with the max, the average, and the min temperatures along the line of that marker. And you can see also, we now have information for our line graph. These are all of the data points plotted along that line. You can see the X profile for that, as well as the Y profile, the histogram of the data. And you can also, if you wanted to, export that data to CSV. Now, again, this is sort of one of those items that we probably do want to edit because our text is white on a white or a yellowish background, so it's very hard to read, and we probably don't want to call it L0. So we select the item that we want to edit. We can use the pencil icon, edit. You can see this is the marker that we're working with, LO, so we can change this to line marker. We want to change the color. Remember, our background's yellow or white, so maybe we want to use a turquoise color. And in this case, let's say we want to remove the minimum label. We don't care about the data for that. So now our line marker is now turquoise. We've named it, and we've eliminated one of the pieces of information because it's irrelevant for our purposes. So we've just added two custom markers, a rectangle marker and a line marker. We've edited each one of those markers by changing the color and showing the information that we want to show. So maybe now at this point I decide my rectangle isn't where I really want it to be. So I want to edit. I want to go in to edit this particular marker. Well, in order to do that, I need to use the select marker option. So I click on select marker, and then I tell the system which marker I want to go in and select and work on. So I want to work on the area of concern marker, which happens to be our rectangle marker. And once I select that, you'll see that I now have boxes on the corners of each one of the rectangle points. That shows me it's now in edit mode, so I can click on any one of those corners and reshape the rectangle box. So just a reminder, use the select marker option, select which marker you want to edit, and that will change, that'll show you here by adding these little marker points at the end. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is how to calculate a delta using a reference point. So we need to add two specific custom markers using the point marker type. Remember, to add a marker, we select which marker type we want to add by clicking the left mouse button. We now see we're in draw mode, and we've got the yellow box surrounding the point marker type. So if I want to add a marker to highlight this specific area of the chart because it's hot, I can do that simply by clicking my left mouse button. Now I'm still in draw marker mode with the point marker highlighted, so if I continue moving my mouse around the screen, I can add more marker points. These are default named as well, so it's got P0 and P1 for the names of each one of these markers. If we scroll over here, you can see that here's where they appear in our table, P0 and P1. Now, they're displaying the actual temperature data from the pixel on where the marker point is, 75.9 degrees for P0 and 69.7 degrees for P1, which is great. And if I continue to click around on the screen, it will add multiple points. But what I want to do is I want to calculate the temperature difference between P0 and P1, and I want to have that displayed on my chart. The only way to do that is to say, I need to go into the software and identify which one of my marker points is a reference marker. So I do that. Remember, I go in order to edit any one of my custom markers, I can go in here and double click on it. And you can see here's the marker name. And if you go down to just below the color, there's an option that says reference marker. Now this is only available for the single point marker types, but if I click this and then click apply, you'll notice one, we've now identified this by a little bullseye that this is the reference marker that everything else is going to be measured against. And you can see now we've got a triangle representing delta and the calculation of the temperature difference between P0 marker and P1 marker. So if I go over here and I click on the marker type and I add any other marker points to my chart, those are all going to calculate the delta against the reference point. So every one of those additional marker points will be calculated against this reference point. Now, if I decide that I really don't care about the delta, oops, I can go in here, double click, and deselect this as a reference marker. I would rather have the actual temperature data display. So if I deselect that as a reference marker, now I've got the actual temperature back. I can also change my reference marker. Maybe P3 is the important one. Double click here. I want to make that my reference marker and calculate all the deltas against that particular point on the chart. So P3 is now the bullseye. That's the reference marker point, and we're calculating deltas against that particular measurement point. This is very helpful to identify measurement differences or temperature differences between different points on your chart. So if you've got two fuses and one's hot and one's cold and you want to compare the difference, have the software do the calculations for you, you can do that. All right, so we've got a lot of information on our chart. This is probably way more information you would ever really want to have on your thermal image, but I do want to show you, I did cover this really quick earlier, but I do want to show you how you can go about deleting something. So let's say I want to delete my line marker. Oops, all right, line marker. I click line marker to highlight it, and then I click the delete button, and I say yes. And boom, it's gone. So it's just that simple. Select the one you want to delete and then click the trash icon. So you can see once I've selected area of concern, which is my rectangle marker, I can use the trash can to delete it. All right, so that was a lot of information, but we covered basically how to optimize your image and how to analyze your image so that you can present information to your customers and focus in on the areas that they need to see. The next section is how to add notes to an image, where we will cover each one of the options available in more detail. So here we're in the image editor again, but this time we're in the notes tab. So here you can add notes about the image, things like tracking hot point temperature since it's noticeably hotter after 1 month, or this is something we need to watch, just notes to yourself. We've got the notes section, which is where observations or analysis of issues in the image or just a flag to continue monitoring an area of concern. Notes can be added to an image from any platform. So the mobile app, the web app, or the desktop app. Right now we're working in the desktop app and we can add a note to our image, and we will in a moment. But we can also do it from our mobile app. So if we're out in the field and we've got our cell phone handy, we can add a note right to the image right then and there while we're thinking of it. We've got photo notes, which includes the visible light image of the infrared image, along with any other photos you've taken with the infrared camera. We've got voice notes, and you can use this field to listen to audio notes that you recorded using your infrared camera. Now, not all infrared cameras have the ability to record voice notes. That's usually some of the more top of the line cameras that have that feature. So Just keep that in mind if you're looking for that option on your camera. And last, we've got annotations, which is just another form of notes available to users. Here in the Add a Note area is where you can click to add an additional note. And then, of course, don't forget the Save button to save your changes. So we're going to go over into the Fluke Connect Desktop software and add a note to our image. Oh, let's close out of what we were doing here. We're not going to save our changes. Double click to edit the image. Covered Optimize, Analyze. Now we're going to Notes. This is a visible light image of the infrared image. Any other images we would have taken would appear here as well. If we had a voice note that we recorded using our camera, we would be able to play that voice note here, which is great. If you're recording notes along with your images in the field, we can go back and reference that information. And then we've got annotations, which is just another form of note. Now in our case, we're just going to add a quick little note here. And once we click the add button, you'll note that in the note that we just added, sorry for the, it automatically date and time stamps the note, and it shows the username of the user that we're logged in as. I'm logged into my demo account, which is called Riley Russell. I can edit this note or delete this note. So anybody on the team that's added notes, those notes will be visible here so that we can track any changes to our assets. Our last section is how to use the group edit option, where we will cover the different ways to do group edits. So going back to the file manager view, again, this is where we can access the files that are not being synced to the cloud. You can see these are the two files that are not in our FC cloud folder, so they're not being synced to the cloud. So to access those files, we click on the measurement tab and the file manager view, which is the far right icon. And then we need to select more than one file. So in this case, we've got two selected because I only have two available. But you use your left mouse button to click on the first file that you want to select. And just like in any other Windows file manager, in order to select a second file, you click and hold down the Shift key and then use your left mouse button to select the second file. So left mouse click to click the first one, click and hold the Shift key down, and then use the left mouse button to select the second file. Once you've selected more than one file in the File Manager view, the Group Actions options will appear here on the upper right portion of your screen. You'll want to select the icon that looks like a pencil on top of a stack of papers. This is the Group Edit icon. So this is how you can go in and edit multiple images at the same time for the images that are not being synced to the cloud. To edit images in the image preview screen, you would click on the Measurements tab, click on the Tile Manager view so that we can see a preview of all of our images, and you simply select the checkbox next to the name of each one of the files. So I want to edit these two specific images, so I select checkbox 1, checkbox 2. I've got multiple images selected. That is shown here, two selected measurements. Now, if I wanted to, I could scroll through all of my images and select 5 to 10 to, I think it's up to 100 different images at once. I can select all of the images from the last inspection round. Anything I need to do that I would want to do a group edit on, I can select all of those images at once. Once I selected more than one image, the group actions will appear here. Now in our image preview screen, it comes up on the bottom part of our screen, not the top, but it does show the same exact edit icon, which is the little pencil on top of a stack of papers. So that's the group edit option. When I click on that group edit option, it takes me into the batch thermal editor mode. Now this, as you can see, looks very similar to the Optimize tab, but has much fewer options than what we had before. But what's great is we still have the ability to edit the palette, the saturation, the contrast mode, and the markers. We can also adjust the scale. Now, I wouldn't recommend adjusting the scale on a big batch of images, but I would in fact recommend adjusting the palette, because that might be something. Maybe you took your thermal imager out, you took 100 images because you did an entire factory inspection, and you get back to the office and your boss is like, I think we should just go with iron bow. Blue red is not where we're at. We need to look at these, viewing them through iron bow palette. And you're like, oh my God, I have 100 images. I need to go in and change each one of the palettes on all of those 100 images. Well, use the group edit option, select, up to 100 images, select the palette, switch it from blue, red to iron bow, and poof, they're all edited. They're all changed. You can also, if you want to, choose to remove the display markers. If you've been in the system and you've been playing around, say on 5 to 10 different images, and you want to just delete those or take those off, you can do that as well. Again, don't forget to save your changes. It's this little tiny disk icon. It's a floppy disk icon for the save button once you're done making your changes. So last but not least, we're going to pop into the Fluke Connect Desktop software to use the group edit option. Let's see, so Fluke Connect. Do not want to save my changes. And I'm actually going to find two similar images. There we go. So these are the two images that I want to edit. So I select one and I select two. And once I select more than one image, the group actions option box comes up at the bottom here. And this is the group edit. You notice you do have, if you don't know what each one of these icons do, you can hover. If you slowly move from one to another, you can see what they actually do. So I want to do the batch edit or the group edit. So I click on this option. And just like the PowerPoint screen displayed, we've got two measurements selected. You can see them down here, but we can change the palette, the saturation, the contrast mode, or the markers, along with the scale. So let's go ahead and change these to iron bow. You can see both of our measurements down here. Our thermal images have been changed. If I want to, I can look at the second one. So that's the second one. That's the first one. Scroll back up. If I want to go back to blue-red, I could do that. But so you can see I'm able to change multiple images at the same time, which is great, especially for things like editing the palette. Sorry about that. All right. That concludes the presentation portion of the second Fluke Connect workshop. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.